Hello again and welcome to Ag Life, our 5th episode as we cross, would you believe it, the 1-month mark for the show. I'm Gerard Lampow, and on the menu we find out who's confirming for next year's Agrivisions in the border city. We meet a writer and photographer who is documenting the role of women on the farm, and as well, with the weather really not pitching in, Dustin Weinkauf is going to join us for a chat about harvest safety, because whenever it starts, it's going to go down real quick. You can be certainly sure of that. First, organizers for next year's Agrivisions here in the border city are putting systems in place for the 2019 showpiece. We find out that some really big names will be in the border city next February. The scoop is out as organizers for next year's Agrivisions are dishing on some of the headliners and attractions coming to Lloydminster on February 13th and 14th.
Probably the most excited about having is Brad Wall. Brad has been, a leader in Saskatchewan, or a premier in Saskatchewan for the last few years, has gone into retirement, but just so knowledgeable on all the issues dealing with ag and the economics, the economy.
Agrivisions 2019 will feature the annual Campfire Victuals banquet on the first evening, with tons more on the menu.
We have Ann Wasco coming as a cattle market analyst. We have Adam Pukalo coming from PI Financial, dealing with the grain markets. Cody Creelman, he's a vet with Herd Health.
As well, attendees can look out for the Innovations Zone.
So last year was the combines. This year we're flipping back into the seeders again, because seeding technology just changes so much.
Local dealers are on board, putting together a showcase of all the latest gear.
This is a great opportunity to be able to come out and talk to the dealers and talk to the company reps.
There's a lot on the seed side too, as new varieties continue to roll out.
New for this year will be a soybean class. It won't be a seed class, it'll be a display class, and we just hope to bring some of the agronomic information to people that they may not have seen before.
Harbin says seed development has moved a good crop from being 40 bushels to producers wanting 60 bushels per acre, and it all starts with good seed. Back to Harvest 18, producers are remaining positive even as their livelihood is being threatened by the swift change in the weather.
On the bright side, it is still September. We have October, so winter hopefully won't be here yet, and hopefully there's lots of great combining time ahead of us.
Indeed, hope springs eternal. One of the important things on our show is our events calendar, and you can certainly send in your various community events to us here. Let's roll the calendar. And still to come, it's another edition of Equine Information Night. Ag Life continues after this break.
This segment of Ag Life is brought to you by Webb's Machinery. Webb's Machinery, your New Holland dealer in Vermilion, Vegreville, and Lamont.
Welcome back. Local horse lovers were asking questions well into the evening at a recent Equine Information Night. We find out why the topics under discussion prompted such interest.
These, for example, these little horses are prone to a lot of impactions in the large colon and also the small colon, which is even harder to treat.
The Lloydminster Animal Hospital hosted another in its Equine Night information series. One of the topics explored colic in horses. Dr. Claudia Cruz, who did her training in large animals in the States, says while colic relates to pain in the abdomen, it could also show up as kidney problems, uterine or testicular pain, which may also present as colic.
So it's mainly pain related to the abdominal cavity or outside the abdomen that acts like colic. So it's a lot of things. Most of the colics are due to gastroenteric problems, so GI problems.
Horses eat constantly, so it could be something as simple as a sudden change in diet.
They ate something differently, that their diets were changed abruptly without being in a gradual way, and then you upset the GI microflora, and then they just go and have colic.
This will sound odd, but vets are happy to see the stool from the horse.
You can also get some information about the presentation of those feces. So obviously if there is blood, then that's not healthy at all. And
owners need to look out for signs of pain or discomfort, sudden changes in behavior or diet.
There's some breeds that are well known to be more tolerant to pain, if I might say, and that would be the heavy breeds like Percherons, Belgian Drafts, all these big horses. They almost never show any pain, but that doesn't mean they don't feel pain.
Dr. Cruz says miniature horses, donkeys and even mules are very good at holding pain in.
If a horse is agitated, pacing around, circling, pawing, sweating, kicking at his or her belly, going up and down often.
Left untreated, it could result in death, so owners need to seek medical attention for their animals. And when we come back, author Billi Jean Miller sits down for a chat about her Farmwives book series, looking at women in agriculture and, of course, exploring what's her next move. Ag Life continues after this break. Thanks again for choosing Ag Life, and my next guest is a photographer by trade, but she's come to the Midwest region and come to agriculture in the last little while. Billi Jean Miller, thank you very much for taking a moment with us. Your book, Farmwives, one was quite the sensation, and it prompted you to begin digging into Farmwives 2, and that too has just been a bestseller, let me put it that way. You've been, well, coast to coast, honestly.
It's been a real honor, actually. I've got the opportunity to highlight a lot of local women, which is the thing that I'm the most proud of in the first book. The second book, I expanded the vision and I interviewed women from across the country, and that's been a really interesting journey as well.
Yeah. Now, some things about your journey has really brought the passion to the work that you do. Tell me a few things about your journey and coming to agriculture.
I married a fourth-generation farmer in 2010, and prior to that, I had been living in the city and working for the government, the provincial government. And so it was definitely a change in my lifestyle when I moved back to the Lloydminster region. I had grown up here, but I'd moved away many years ago. So coming from the city, living back here again and moving to a farm situation, which I hadn't grown up in, was definitely an interesting ride for sure.
Yeah, so it gives you that kind of intimate knowledge of the grain operation, and for many producers right now, with the weather that we've had, some folks have managed to do some swathing, some people have combined the peas, but the cash crop, canola, wheat and so on, still sitting in the field.
It's still sitting there. It's stressful. It's something that, especially when you come from a paycheck every 2 week kind of background, learning to live on the adjustment of just not really knowing how your crop's going to be from year to year. You're so dependent on the weather and so dependent on situations that you can't control. So it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, and I'll bring that right back to women involved in agriculture, because our intimate knowledge of how food gets on the table, sometimes we miss that. But the role of women in the context of what we're seeing right now, given the fact that producers are stalled in the middle of harvest.
That's right. I think that the interesting thing about this project and this 2-book project was I interviewed women For the first book, very traditional women who were in that traditional role of the farm wife. The second book expanded to interviewing women, younger generation, so in their 20s to 50s. And as you can obviously understand, those roles have changed absolutely pivotally across the country. And that's really what I wanted to celebrate and wanted to highlight. But each of them have absolutely pivotal roles in getting that food to the table across the country and across the world. And it was an honor for me to be able to show how those roles, what those roles look like now.
Yeah, and bringing it back to the question of our harvest being stolen, the people that you've met, the women that you've met, and in the books that you've written, what would their role be in a present situation like this? What would be some of the things on their minds? What would be some of the actions that they might be taken in such a crisis situation?
Well, thanks to the wonders of social media nowadays and the accessibility of the internet and being able to keep in touch with people across the country, I follow on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook a lot of the women in both of my books, and specifically a lot of the women in the second book. I'm watching their struggles across the country, and I mean, obviously they're, in southern Alberta, they've been done for quite some time. Southern Saskatchewan, they've been done for quite some time, but I mean, drought situations existed for them, and the stress for them is huge. And here, I know in our own situation, we've got our crop sitting in the field still. We haven't been able to combine it yet.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people in our region are going through that situation. And so to answer your question of those women's roles, it's not just of the traditional farm wife anymore. A lot of these women, I mean, they are farmers just as much as their husbands, And the women in the first book, I also agree their roles may have changed somewhat, but women are just as pivotal to the farming industry as men are, and I don't think anybody disagrees with that.
Yeah. It's hard to maybe pick out one or two of the stories in all of your books, but let me see if I can find some themes or some categories. One of them that I'm fascinated by in the second book is where you find women who are actually running their own operation. There are no men involved in it for whatever the reasons. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that aspect of it.
There was a woman from the East Coast, and she, I believe, bought the farm before her husband was really in the picture. He works off the farm, and she works on, her job is her farm. And her husband is involved in it also, but I mean, he was kind of not really a factor in the very beginning. And I think that's a really interesting to portray that situation now. And I mean, I was really honored that these women agreed to be in the second book, in a book titled Farm Wife, because a lot of them, and I gave them the opportunity to explain their thoughts on the term, whether they considered themselves one or not.
Yeah, tell me about that part even.
Yeah, well, I felt like that was really important because I didn't want to look like it was just celebrating women in the traditional role. I wanted to show how it was changing and how it was evolving for everyone. And so I was a little nervous asking some of the women, this will be the title of the book, but I have a question where I ask, what is your opinion on the term farm wife, and do you consider yourself to be one? And I think that was a deciding factor for a lot of them. They themselves wanted to show and were really proud to show, which I'm honored about. They were really proud to show that, farm wife now exists. We can make it whatever we want it to be. Nobody defines us, nobody tells us what our role is anymore. And I think it's just a really beautiful story between the two books.
Awesome, awesome. In terms of some of the other women that you highlight, maybe share something about those, anyone that I'm hard-pressed to say sticks out in particular or stands out.
I'm just so proud of all of them. They all highlight such a beautiful life, a beautiful part of their life, and they also really honor a beautiful part of the country. And the fact I took the recipes forward and had them all provide recipes for the second book as well. And one of the recipes is PEI Sunday supper. Well, that of course includes lobster. How cool is that? And if only I had the ability to travel to each of these farms. One day I'd love to, but I just envision what life is like on that farm in PEI. And I see that family coming together at the table just like all the rest of us do. And talk about their life, talk about their day on the farm, talk about their worries, their concerns, their hopes for the future. We're all kind of the same, but our environment is different. And I just kind of like to hone in on that connection between everyone.
Yeah. One thing I thought about in our meeting today is that we bear sort of similarity in the sense that you grew up in agriculture, moved away from it, but not having that intimate knowledge. Now you're married to a farmer and you've brought your skills and talents to bear on telling the agriculture stories, celebrating ag life, as it were. And my own journey within the last 8 years has been someone who is coming from an energy-based economy to an agrarian lifestyle that still has energy around it, but still not having the intimate knowledge of how our food is produced, but yet taking my skills and talents and bringing it to bear on something that I've become passionate and fascinated about. Yeah. Is there anything about your skill set that really you bring to bear that highlights, that you want to talk about in your writing and in your photography, actually, Billi?
Well, something, you know, I guess is something I'll say that I have been told when people have heard me speak or when I've taken their photographs, you know, and captured their history of their farm or their family, is I put my heart into my work. And anyone who's heard me speak publicly or, you know, small crowd or large crowd, I wear my heart on my sleeve. And it's something
that is true.
yeah, and that's something that I can't hide. But, you know, instead of changing it or instead of, you know, turning away from that, I've just kind of, you need to honor that in yourself. And my story is although I didn't come from agriculture growing up, I did come from this area. And so it was like a sense of returning home for me. And people have resonated with my story, and I've become more honest about my story when I've done speeches. And I came from a very different lifestyle in terms of my family upbringing and my family dynamic. It was a broken home, and I've gone through a lot of divorces and that kind of parental divorces, not my own, but, you know, and so I think that just has given me the heart and the real gratitude and appreciation for the lifestyle I've come into and what I'm providing for my own kids now and what I'm providing in my marriage and what I'm providing in my community. And that just means the world to me. And the fact that people are asking me to come to, I'm doing the Manitoba Farm Women's Conference in November and another one and 2 more in Alberta and stuff. And I'm just really honored for that. I'm honored to be able to share these women's stories, but I'm also honored that people have resonated with mine.
Yeah, and I've enjoyed your sharing, the passion that you bring to it, and I think the agriculture industry right across the country, coast to coast to coast, is the better for it for sharing these stories here about women in agriculture. If you just hold up one for me. I also like serendipity, that part of our journey that is just sometimes random, sometimes unexplained. I'll show you what I mean on that. I'm going to open the book randomly and just read whatever my eyes highlight on it there, and then we'll come to the end. Has there been anything you were not prepared for since becoming a farm wife? One of the questions Billie Jean poses in her book Farmwives 2 to one of her interviewees, and the response is, I think back to our first crop of potatoes as a married couple. That first fertilizer bill I opened up, well, a little voice in my head wanted to scream, what the hell have I gotten myself into? That's awesome. And of course, Jonathan, I'm guessing that's her husband, laughed and said, dear, get used to it. The cost of farming is something I wasn't prepared for. Farmwives 2. Billie Jean Miller, and you've got Farmwives 1, the profile, right. Recipes and all included.
You bet. You could find the books at Home Hardware in town. I'm so grateful for the local support, and on any major online retailer, Chapters, Amazon, whatever.
Yeah. What's next in the chapter for you?
There will be more books out of me, but my hubby always laughs at me when I tell him I've made the firm commitment for at least the next 8 months I will not start writing a new book. I'm just going to ride this out. You don't know where opportunities are going to lead you, and I'm getting a lot of new ones with these books. And I feel like I've kind of closed a chapter telling the story of these women. And so I just want to see where it takes me. I want to have as many opportunities as I can to speak about them and speak about what I've learned from this experience. And
my gut tells me that is the next move.
That is.
What am I seeing on Twitter there? Advancing women in agriculture?
Yeah, I did speak at that one. I'm not going to that one actually, but I'm going to Manitoba.
Okay.
And yeah, I spoke at that one in Calgary, the one in in
Awesome.
Calgary. But yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah. Well, congratulations again.
Thank
Good to
you
catch
so
up with
much.
you. Best of luck
Thank
to
you.
all the farming families as we rally to get her
Absolutely.
done before the big event, the word that begins with W. But best of luck to everyone. Ag Life continues after this break. Well, some producers have managed to get out in the field, others are still stalled due to these weather conditions. But when it all comes together, it'll go pretty quickly. But with haste, there's always the need to be safe. We get some pointers on running the combine when the harvest haste kicks in. These massive machines are raring to go, but the weather has got them sitting idle and area producers unsure of when they will get in the field. But when they get going, it will be hard and fast, so there's always a need to keep safety first.
Don't take things for granted. Make sure guys and operators are comfortable with the machines, that we've went through that with them, make them comfortable. They know what will go on in those situations. Stuff as simple as safety shields and lockouts are on these machines for a reason. Don't be getting out of the cab and climbing around with things engaged. Entanglement becomes a very scary thing.
Some producers may have a new combine from Agland, but the weather has them still waiting to fully try it out.
When we come out, we go through it, show them all the features, all those things, the safety lockouts. We go through all that with the customers, make sure that they're comfortable, and then we just ask, that they share that with the rest of their team.
Another simple rule is if you must exit the combine, switch it off first.
These machines now have interlock safeties in them, so if you do get out of the seat with anything engaged, everything shuts off, and a horn will actually sound until the last moving part is done moving.
Whenever the weather smartens up, producers will then be working around the clock.
With farming, there's no short days. Nobody ever expects it to be a short day. So, just, I guess, eating properly, getting the rest when you can, taking advantage of that. Keep your mind there, stay in contact with people, let them know where you are. So in the event that something does happen and you're expected somewhere at a certain time.
Weinkauf adds, check your surroundings if you have to reverse, and as well, other drivers, please be patient with our farmers at this busy time.
Be aware of your surroundings, watch for power lines, know where everyone is, and just have a safe harvest.
That's a wrap on this week's show. I'm Gerard Lampow. We'll see you next time for All Things Ag.